Well, Matt, I'm very excited to talk with you today and hear more about this film coming to theaters. And it's just so interesting because this is so different. There's been a couple productions that have gone from stage to film, but this is really the heart of what this project is combining the two right from the beginning, which is so different.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a unique thing. I've never been a part of one that has sort of approached it this way. We've approached something with like a production that you archive, but we never really produced something that we approached um, fully presented on stage and then recorded it in a cinematic fashion. So yeah, it's very different.
So talk about your role, because I want to make sure people know as you were speaking about this story, which I'm just so excited that more people are getting to know about her story. We'll talk about that in a moment. More people need to know. But talk about kind of your role in all of this. And I do think it's unique as a stage director that you also do have to think about film and how it's going to be in theaters as well.
Yes, it is. Been an incredible learning process in that as well. But I'm one of the producers from the beginning, and so I produced the film. But also for the stage version that we recorded, I was the stage director and the costume set designer. So a little bit of the vision behind the stage production, and then I got to be a producer on the filming of it.
So, all right. So explain how this works and how you guys, your team is telling her story. Of course, we're talking about Corrie Ten Boom, which again, let's go ahead and address it. I told you before we got started, I feel like there's two groups of people that know her story,
Mhm.
love her story. And then you have this whole other group, a whole nother generation now that hasn't heard about her. And I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle.
Mhm.
I'm eager to hear more about what has inspired you, and then I think what can inspire a whole new generation of kind of really God's forgiveness and love, and how we go outside of what the rules are,
Mhm.
um, to love others.
Yeah. I mean, as the guiding principle, let me say, it is truly the thing that propelled them forward. Uh, so, I mean, initially, my involvement, was as wanted to bring it to the stage. We thought, well, I mean, I grew up on the tale, so I read it as a kid in school, and then I also saw the film that was done in the 1970s. I saw that version as a kid, and I was always touched by it. I was always inspired by it. There was something in the secretiveness. There was something in the miraculous courage of this family, and I was always moved by all the elements. And so I feel like it has always been sort of there as a base. And Corey's story really came to light through Billy Graham's the film. He produced the film, but they really lifted that tale. So when you were talking about generationally, there was while I was really young at that point, there was my parents, everybody read the book at that point because Billy Graham had really lifted it up. So there was a major level for her to reach so many Christians with her incredible story. But there hasn't been a huge resurgence. So we got this big, huge thing in like the late 70s, early 80s, and everybody knew about it. And then it's just sort of teetered off a little bit and been a little bit more, dare I say, underground. It's still very relevant. People still read it, but it hasn't had a new iteration. And that was really a motivation that we had, was really wanting to see a new generation of people come to know and love the story, as well as those that already knew it before, see it with fresh eyes.
What do you think is because my first thought may be, well, why don't we just remake the movie? Why
Hmm.
don't we, there's still that may come later, but why a stage portion of this story and this production of it? Explain why that drew you in and why you say this is why and this is the time to do this type of storytelling.
Oh, that's a great question. I hope to answer it well. I mean, I number one, as an artist, it's something that I've really been wanting to do between my world of theater and cinema. Everything I present on stage, which you would see in this film, I try and bring theatrical, cinematic qualities to the theater. And then I love when film is going theatrical and not just realism. There is so much more in our world than just realism, because realism is what it looked like, what happened. But there is also what it felt like, the emotions behind things that can start to shape things as well. So even in our production, the way that we go from one scene to the next is very cinematic. And now that is typically in a live show. So kind of putting the world, I just feel like that's what I've done is I've spent most of my time trying to blur those two lines. And I love that we get a chance to do that. But why on stage first? I would say the great part about this, and we've already been hit up, so many people want to license it to tell this in their high school, in their community, in regional theater, that there wasn't a play version for them to tell this story. And when you look at other incredible classics like Sound of Music and others that are both historical and moving, those have such a life within these communities being told over and over and over again. But there was nothing for Corey's story, and I think it had really given that gap that you were talking about. And I believe that the stage version is going to help bridge that gap.
I was
Now,
gonna say, so is your answer yes, that schools and different
oh
things can
yes,
eventually use it? Okay, yeah.
anyone can. And I think, the best way to learn the story is to live through it and to really memorize the lines and feel every bit of it. But then why the film added to it? And I think that that just takes the ideas. We also didn't want to challenge the old movie. You know what I mean? Like, it was that's new. We wanted everything to be new. We were not replacing anything. We feel like you can read the book, you can watch the '70s film, and you can watch our film and maybe see it on stage too. All of those are an experience the audience can just find a richer, deeper connection to Corey's story. And anytime something is as powerful as this, I personally watch them again and again and again. I just want almost like memorization. I want the power to sort of continue to inspire me. And so
Can
we
you
love.
can you talk about that personally and how her story, and I can't imagine kind of living with this day in and day out.
Yeah,
But talk about that because again, I think there's a new generation that needs to know what she did, what she sacrificed,
yeah,
and who she followed.
right. And, I don't wanna put it's hard to put it in a nutshell because there's so many elements to it, and I never wanna belittle her incredible tale. But the power of the family that really started with the father and the grandfather, that you find their legacy. One thing that was interesting is during the moments in our play, where they're in the living room harboring Jews that were, under persecution, their grandfather had started praying for the Jewish people in that same living room 100 years before. He just felt convicted, and there was nothing at that time politically that necessarily drove that. I don't want to speak for him, but he didn't know the future. He didn't know what was coming. So it was just such an incredible thing to see that that family cared about the Jews and their history and their plight, and there's a culture. They really cared about them way before they ever had to really act on it. And but then the thing that compels me is when you did have the Holocaust happening and they did become a part of the underground, they it wasn't people they knew. So it was not a case where they said, "Oh, we love our neighbor across the street and down the street, and we're going to harbor them to safety because we know and we love them." They literally had somewhere near 600 to 800 people come through their home on their way to safety, and they put their lives on the line to offer safe harbor for them. That was more powerful to me, that it wasn't always a personal relationship, but it was a true conviction of, this isn't right, and I will literally put my safety at risk in order to do the right thing. And I love, as Casper their father says that his home is open to anyone who knocks. And I love that their protest is not anger. Their protest is not violence. Their protest is not in any way conniving. They even struggled with, how do I lie if I were asked? But their protest was love and hospitality.
We
And
have a
that,
lot to learn from that.
oh, all of this, we need to hear it again and again and
Yes.
again. And it was for people that were different from them.
Yeah.
And that's like,
Yep,
it's
talk about being
truly,
relevant today.
oh, and they really, if you read as they really take the principles of Jesus's teachings and put it into action. And then you've got the whole story of forgiveness that comes up at the end of this tale. That is the most convicting part of it. So I feel like there's so many layers to this story that can challenge us. I always ask myself, would I do the same? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I'm strong enough. And that is I think it's good to question that for ourselves and really know we never would want a situation to continue being like that. But it is interesting to think, what would I do? What would I do?
And I love that this is why it's recorded. This is why I'm assuming we want everyone to go in the theater and see this, but
Yes.
I'm assuming people can eventually watch it at home over and over again, because again, there is so much packed in here and so much to learn from this family. Matt, thank you so much. I look forward to hopefully catching up with you again on maybe what your next project is. And
Love to.
again, hopefully we'll see this in schools and other
Yeah.
different avenues across the country, maybe even the world as well. So
Wouldn't that be amazing?
yes, it would.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.